My wife thought an open marriage would let her have it all, until I turned her game against her and took everything she valued. I should have seen it coming when Sarah started talking about space. It wasn't the kind of space you ask for when you need a weekend alone to clear your head. No, this was different, calculated, slippery, like she was testing the waters before diving in. At first, it was just little hints, tossed into conversations like crumbs I was supposed to ignore. Don't you ever wonder what else is out there? She'd say, her voice casual, her eyes flicking to mine for half a second before darting away. I'd laugh it off, thinking she was just being her usual restless self. Sarah was always chasing something. New hobbies, new friends, new ideas. I figured this was another phase. But phases don't end with your wife of 6 years sitting you down at the kitchen table, folding her hands like she's about to deliver a business proposal, and saying, I think we should open things up. I remember the exact moment she said it. The clock on the wall was ticking too loud. The coffee in my mug had gone cold, and Sarah's face, usually so warm, so familiar, was locked into this weird, rehearsed calm. Open things up? I echoed, setting my mug down harder than I meant to. She didn't flinch. She just nodded like she'd practiced this in the mirror. Yeah, you can explore a little. We've been together since college, Ethan. I love you, but I feel like I'm missing out on experiences. There was the first crack in the facade. Missing out wasn't about us growing together. It was about her wanting something else, someone else, while keeping me tethered like a dog on a leash. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. So, you want to sleep with other people? I asked, keeping my tone flat. She sighed, like I was the one being difficult. It's not just about that. It's about freedom, about not feeling stuck. You get it, right? Oh, I got it. Crystal clear. Sarah wasn't asking for freedom. She was asking for permission to cheat without the guilt. And the way she kept going, laying out her little pitch, I knew she'd already thought this through. I mean, I know you, she said, reaching for my hand across the table. You're not the type to go chasing random women. That's not you. Her smile was soft, almost patronizing. You're steady, dependable. You don't need that kind of thing. Translation: I was the safe bet, the guy who'd sit at home while she went off to explore. I felt my fingers twitch under hers, but I didn't pull away. Not yet. And you think I'd be okay with this? I asked, keeping my voice low. She tilted her head, still smiling. I think you'd understand. You're not possessive or insecure like some guys. You'd see it's not about replacing you. It's about me finding myself. Finding herself. That was the line that stuck with me. Because I knew Sarah too. I knew how she operated. She wasn't lost. She'd already found exactly what she wanted. She just needed me to sign off on it. I didn't say anything for a long moment, letting the silence stretch out between us. Her eyes flickered, just for a second, like she wasn't sure if she'd misjudged me. Then I nodded, slow and deliberate. Okay, I said. Let's try it. Her face lit up, too fast, too eager. She leaned over the table, kissed me quick, and started babbling about ground rules and honesty and how this would bring us closer. I let her talk, nodding along, playing the part of the understanding husband. But inside, I was already planning. Sarah thought she'd won. She had no idea what she'd just unleashed. The next few days, I kept up the act. I didn't argue, didn't sulk, didn't give her any reason to suspect I was anything but on board. She, meanwhile, started slipping. Little things at first, staying late at work, texting with her phone tilted just out of my sight, humming to herself like she was in some kind of giddy haze. I didn't confront her. I didn't need to. I knew what was coming. And then, one night, she left her laptop open on the couch. Rookie mistake. I wasn't even snooping, just walked by and saw the screen glowing. A chat window was up, minimized but not closed. The name at the top, Jake, her old high school boyfriend. The guy she'd run into a few months back at some alumni event she swore was no big deal. I clicked it open, and there was weeks of messages, flirty at first, then explicit. Can't wait to see you again, he'd written the night before. He doesn't suspect a thing, she'd replied. My chest tightened, but I didn't flinch. I just closed the laptop, poured myself a drink, and sat there in the dark, thinking. Jake. Of course it was Jake. The guy she'd always talked about like he was some unfinished chapter, some what if she'd romanticized over the years. I'd met him once, tall, cocky, the kind of guy who thinks he's God's gift. She'd laughed it off back then, said he was just a friend, nothing to worry about. But here he was sliding back in her life, and she'd built this whole open marriage charade just to justify it. The best part? She thought I'd never figure it out. She thought I'd sit there, oblivious, while she played house with him and kept me as her fallback. That's when I decided. If Sarah wanted an open marriage, she'd get one. But not the way she expected. I didn't rush it. That's not how you win a game like this. You don't lash out or storm off. You wait, you watch, you strike when they least expect it. So I let her think she was in control. She started going out more, making excuses about girls' nights or late meetings. I'd nod, kiss her goodbye, tell her to have fun. She'd come home late, smelling like perfume she didn't wear for me, and I'd pretend not to notice. Meanwhile, I started digging. Jake wasn't hard to find. His social media was wide open, full of gym selfies and vague, smug posts about living his best life. I cross-checked dates. Sure enough, his nights out lined up with hers. Then I found the kicker, a photo from 2 weeks back, some bar downtown, his arm around her waist, her laughing like she hadn't laughed with me in years. Caption, finally free. Tag her. She'd untagged herself, but not fast enough. I saved the screenshot. Evidence is power. A week later, I made my move. Sarah wasn't the only one with options. Enter Claire, her co-worker, her confidant, the one person she'd never suspect. Claire and I had always gotten along. Dry humor, shared eye rolls at Sarah's more dramatic moments. She was smart, sharp, and, as it turned out, fiercely loyal to people who didn't screw her over. I texted her one night, casual, asking if she wanted to grab a drink. Need to vent, I said. She replied in 10 seconds, God, yes. Where? We met at a quiet bar across town, and I laid it all out. Sarah's pitch, the open marriage, Jake. Claire's jaw dropped, then tightened. She told me she was just stressed about work, she said, stirring her drink. That lying little, she didn't finish the sentence, but her eyes said enough. You're not actually okay with this, are you? She asked. I smirked. Not even a little. But she thinks I am. Claire raised an eyebrow, then grinned. Oh, this is going to be good. It didn't take much. Claire was already halfway there, disgusted with Sarah, intrigued by me. We stayed out late, talking, laughing, letting the tension build. By the end of the night, she was leaning close, her hand brushing mine. You deserve better than her, she said, voice low. I held her gaze. I'm starting to think you're right. That was it, the spark. The next night, I invited her over. Sarah was out, again, probably with Jake, so the house was mine. Claire showed up in a black dress that said she wasn't here to play nice. We didn't waste time. It wasn't just revenge, it was better. Sarah had spent years making me feel like the steady, boring one. Claire made me feel alive. Sarah didn't notice at first. She was too wrapped up in her own game. But then Claire started dropping hints, little comments at work, a knowing smile when Sarah walked by. I upped the ante. One night, I left a pair of Claire's earrings on the kitchen counter. Sarah saw them the next morning, froze, and asked, Whose are these? I shrugged. Oh, Claire stopped by. Forgot those, I guess. Her face went pale, but she didn't push it. She couldn't. Her own rules boxed her in. If she got mad, she'd have to admit her open marriage wasn't so open after all. She just swallowed it, stewing, while I kept living my life. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Claire and I went public, not subtle, not quiet. She posted a photo of us on Instagram, dinner, wine, me kissing her cheek. Caption, when you realize what you've been missing. Sarah's phone lit up with notifications, mutual friends, co-workers, her sister. She saw it at work, Claire told me later, and lost it. Stormed into the break room, hands shaking, demanding to know what the hell was going on. Claire just smiled. What? You wanted freedom. He's free. Sarah called me 10 times that night. I didn't answer. She showed up at the house at midnight, banging on the door, screaming my name. I let her in, calm as ice. What are you doing, Ethan? She yelled, tears streaking her face. We're married. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You want an open marriage, Sarah? I'm just following your lead. She tried everything. Anger, guilt, begging. I didn't mean for this to happen. I love you, okay? Jake was a mistake. I laughed, cold and sharp. A mistake you planned for months. You don't get to play victim now. She sank onto the couch, sobbing, but I wasn't moved. She'd gambled on me being her doormat. She'd lost. You can't do this to me, she whispered. I walked to the door, opened it. You did it to yourself. Get out. She didn't leave quietly. There was more yelling, more tears, a slammed door. But she left. The next day, I heard through Claire that Jake had dumped her too. Turns out he didn't like being the side piece in a marriage he thought was open. Sarah was alone, humiliated, scrambling to save face. I didn't care. I filed for divorce a week later. No hesitation. Claire and I kept seeing each other, not just to twist the knife, but because it worked. Sarah had wanted to have it all. Me as her safety net, Jake as her thrill. Instead, she ended up with nothing. And me? I walked away with everything she'd taken for granted. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just living better than they ever will.